On August 10, 1992, Donna Stagner woke up early in the morning around 5 a.m. to wake her husband, John Stagner. The Stagner family resided in Orange County, Florida, and John was a maintenance worker for the county. The family lived in a home on the Orange County maintenance property, where they served as live-in caretakers for the equipment. John had been called out the previous evening to repair a power line that had been damaged during a storm. When Donna went to bed, John had just come back home and started watching TV in the living room. Due to the summer heat, the couple slept in separate bedrooms, with Donna sleeping in an air-conditioned room while John preferred to sleep in a different room. Donna walked into the bedroom where John was sleeping and tried to wake him. She hadn't turned on the lights yet and touched his arm, only to realize he was cold to the touch. As soon as she turned on the lights, she made a terrifying discovery. Her husband had been brutally attacked and beaten to death. Hello and welcome to Dark Secrets, your channel dedicated to exploring some of the most fascinating and haunting crimes in American history. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out. Donna immediately called 911, and law enforcement officials were dispatched to the property. The detectives arrived at the scene and secured it. Although DNA evidence was in its early stages in 1992, the investigators were very careful to find as much evidence as possible that could help them in the investigation. They also preserved the evidence carefully. During the investigation, the detectives found the murder weapon, which was a wooden cane or walking stick at the scene. It was determined that an intruder had entered the home while the family was sleeping and attacked John while he was asleep. There was no evidence of any struggle or break-in in the home. It was believed that the attacker had entered the house through John's open bedroom window. The house was a single-story building, making it easier for the attacker to enter the home unnoticed. The investigation continued, but the case remained unsolved for years. Donna Stagner had lost her husband to a senseless act of violence, and justice had yet to be served. The Stagner family and their community were left in shock when John was brutally murdered in his own home. The crime had been baffling as there were no signs of a break-in, and nothing appeared to have been stolen. John was well respected in the community as a hard-working maintenance worker for Orange County. He was also known for his kindness and generosity towards those around him. The fact that he had been murdered in such a senseless way had left many people wondering who could have done such a thing. Detectives began their investigation by interviewing everyone in John's life, including friends, family, and co-workers, hoping to find any leads that may help them solve the case. One name that came up repeatedly was Ronnie Cates, a man in his 30s whose family had been close to the Stagners. The Stagners had been generous and had even helped out Cates and his family when they were homeless. In fact, John had been like a father figure to Ronnie and had provided them with housing, money, and meals. However, John and Ronnie had a falling out when John lent Ronnie some tools and asked for them back, but Ronnie was having a hard time returning them, which had frustrated John. Law enforcement went to Ronnie's house to interview him, but his young daughter answered the door and claimed he wasn't home. However, they noticed a truck leaving the driveway shortly after and returned to the house. After speaking with Ronnie's daughter, they learned that he had been home but had instructed her to lie to them. This encounter with Ronnie and his daughter provided valuable information for the investigation, and detectives began to focus on him as a possible suspect in John's murder. The murder investigation of John Stagner had gone cold, but law enforcement had never given up on finding his killer. 3 years after the murder, Ronald Cates was committed to a hospital during a mental health crisis. While there, he confessed to the murder of a man in 1992. But Cates was also known for making false claims, including confessing to killing several historical figures, so the authorities couldn't do much with his admission. Years passed, and the case remained unsolved until 2020 when Cates found himself in trouble with the law once again and was imprisoned. While he was in jail, his wife finally came forward with information she had kept hidden for years. She revealed that Cates had a history of violence and substance abuse, and that he had been a suspect in John Stagner's murder. Cates' wife's statement prompted the authorities to reopen the case, and they re-interviewed witnesses and re-examined evidence. They discovered that Cates had given several inconsistent alibis for the night of the murder, and his behavior had been suspicious. However, the prosecution knew that blood evidence and fingerprints, the best tools for prosecution in 1992, were not enough to prove Cates had been in the Stagner home the night of the murder, since he had been a frequent guest. It seemed like the case was still at a dead end. But then, the authorities got a break. They discovered that evidence collected at the scene, which had been thought to be too degraded for analysis in 1992, was now capable of being tested for DNA. The DNA evidence found at the scene matched Cates' DNA profile. After years of silence, Cates' wife finally came forward with information that she had been too scared to reveal before. She explained that her husband was a violent man who had a history of abusing drugs. She said that in 1992, when John Stagner was murdered, she had been the sole provider for their family because her husband couldn't hold a job due to his addiction. She confirmed that Cates had sold some of John's tools to buy drugs and that he had been confronted about returning them. She believed that Cates murdered John in response to the confrontation. According to her, the murder weapon had been a homemade walking stick, which Cates was known to carry around. Furthermore, Cates returned home in the early hours of the morning on the night of the murder with his clothing covered in blood. His daughter even remembered him asking her to hide clothing underneath the house and then burning it days later. Ronald Cates had been on the run for nearly 3 decades, but justice had finally caught up with him. In August 2022, he was arrested and charged with first-degree murder for the senseless killing of John Stagner. Cates was being held in a North Carolina jail while he awaited extradition back to Florida. Law enforcement was finally able to close the case, thanks to the testimony of Cates' wife and children. After years of being too scared to come forward, they revealed the shocking truth about Cates' violent nature and drug addiction, which had led him to sell John's tools to fuel his addiction. When John confronted him about returning the tools, Cates turned to violence and ended John's life with a homemade walking stick. While Cates did not explain the motive behind the murder, he did reveal several details that only someone who had been present during the killing would have known. He was open and forthcoming with law enforcement, which helped to finally close the case after all these years. The Orange County Sheriff's Office expressed their gratitude towards the Cates family for finally coming forward with the information that led to Ronald Cates' arrest. While it was uncommon for someone to come forward with information so many years after the crime, they were grateful they did. Without their testimony, the case may have never been solved, and John's killer would have continued to roam free. Thank you for watching this video. We would like to read your own speculations in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe.